Hello, my name is... Oh, I blinked. Okay, wait. Hello, am I dressed up as Wendy's or Wednesday? We'll never know. I swear I can do this if I'm not in front of a camera. But right now I'm in front of a camera, so let's cut the act and let's keep blinking. Hi, my name is Keeyara again, and today I'm gonna be exploring the world of Wednesday. And am I late to the party? Yes, but was it because I had finals for 2 whole weeks when the show was released? Also, yes. So if you're like me and you binged watched the whole series within a day, then you'd know that Wednesday Addams is mentioned to be a writer in her show, where she pretentiously writes in her little clickety-clackety typewriter, listens to like Latina classical music, which I think is really cool, and references a lot of classics. There are lots of books and works and plays mentioned, most of them gothic horror, and others nodding to famous horror films such as Carrie and Psycho. So yeah, today we're gonna be exploring the literary universe of Wednesday, Netflix's newest hit show, which for some reason wasn't released on Halloween. Afterwards, we're gonna be deciding if Wednesday's taste is pretentious, horrendous, or if it's truly creepy, kooky, spooky, and altogether ooky. The first one I'm going to be reading is Edgar Allan Poe's complete poetry. I'm going to be reading The Raven. I have read it before. I'm just going to be reading it right now, and then I'll get back to you on my thoughts. So I just finished The Raven. The Raven is about the narrator who just lost his wife, Lenore. A raven appears on his window while he is grieving his dead wife. The only thing that the raven can say is nevermore, which is a nod to Nevermore Academy, which is the school that Wednesday attends. The narrator takes it personally that this raven was sent to him by God or by the devil. Every time he asks, "Is my wife in heaven? Is there a cure to a broken heart?" the raven would say, "Nevermore, nevermore." And so he's like, "Oh my God, be gone. You are not comforting me." And that's essentially the whole story of The Raven. Edgar Allan Poe wrote this when he lost his wife and cousin. I think that's the only reference to Nevermore, other than the fact that you see ravens everywhere on their clothes emblem, artsy dude guy painting, the desk of Principal Weems. Wednesday is referred to as a raven. The raven dance was actually named Rave-N. Next, we're gonna be going on to The Different Tales of Mystery and Imagination by Edgar Allan Poe. The 4 different tales that were referenced by Edgar Allan Poe in the Poe Cup, which is The Gold Bug, The Black Cat, The Pit and the Pendulum, and The Cask of Amontillado. I actually started this already, so I'll be cutting to the clips where I'm reading them, and then I'll be coming back here giving my final thoughts. So I am done reading the 4 stories. It took a while because I got kind of sleepy in the middle. The themes are very similar to each other, and Edgar Allan Poe likes burying people alive, okay? The Black Cat. It's essentially about this guy who got very aggressive. He started hitting his animal. He decides to kill his cat. It's a black cat. And afterwards, another cat shows up that looks exactly like his cat. But this time, he can't kill this cat because he feels guilty about killing the other one for some reason. He eventually snaps and kills this cat, but his wife tries to stop him, and he kills his wife. Takes an axe, puts it in her brains, and he's like, "Oh no, I have to hide the body." He buries his wife within his cellar. He tears down the walls, the brick walls, and then he puts his wife inside, and then he covers it up again. Police just shows up out of nowhere and question him, and he brings them to the cellar, and he's like, "Look, there's no one here. There's absolutely no one." And then when they're about to leave, they hear like screaming from this wall. And the police open up the wall, and they find out that the black cat is in there. So that's the story of the Black Cat. The next one that I read was The Cask of Amontillado. Features a jester and also this one guy named Montresor who buries this jester alive because he's like, "I don't like you and you keep making fun of me." This guy lures the jester to a catacomb saying that there's wine there, and the jester guy follows because he loves wine, and then he gets buried alive. And that's exactly what happened to Savior, except there's no wine involved, and he mentions that he hid in the casket of his grandmother.
I had the inspired idea to hide in her casket. and I got stuck as it was headed to the crematorium.
I had heard muffled screams.
Either way, you hit the big red stop button and saved me from being flame broiled.
I think what's really interesting is the Black Cat is the theme of Wednesday, and the Cask of Amontillado is the theme of Savior. Those are the two stories referenced in the Poe Cup that has people who are getting buried alive, which is actually a stretch because Edgar Allan Poe loves to bury people alive. This also happens in The Telltale Heart. A lot of stories of Edgar Allan Poe involve hiding body parts in houses. I do love Edgar Allan Poe, but after a while, it kind of gets repetitive, like give me something new. And the something new that I read was actually The Pit and the Pendulum. I actually really liked this story. It wasn't similar to anything that I've read of Edgar Allan Poe. So if you remember in the boats, there's this one team that no one really cares about, and these are the guys in hooded cloaks. The Pit and the Pendulum is during the Spanish Inquisition. The jury, I guess, were these men in cloaks. And it's also seen with the Nightshades when they kind of like judge whether or not Wednesday will join in the Nightshades Club. So the story goes like this. There's this guy, he's trapped into a dark room and he's like, what is going on? And then he tries to like test his surroundings, looks around. He's basically lost all of his sight because they place him into a dark room and he knows he's gonna be tortured. And then afterwards, when he finally sees light, he sees this like swinging pendulum with a double-headed axe. That's also seen in Wednesday when they had a double-headed axe. So that's the pendulum. And in the pit, there's also a pit there that is like a bottomless pit. And then in the end, the narrator thinks he's free because the rats like nod at all the ropes on him. And then after, when he gets free, the walls start closing in and he only has the choice whether to die by the pendulum or the pit. So that's why it's called The Pit and the Pendulum. The last story that I read was The Gold Bug, which is reference to Bianca. It's actually the first story in this book, The Tales of Mystery and Imagination, and it definitely sets the tone of who is the superior one. And you can see that in Wednesday, where Bianca is the queen bee. She's like the leader, she's like the top of everything. It's set in Sullivan's Island. There are 3 characters. One of them is an African-American slave, another one is like a treasure hunter, another one is the narrator. The second character, he finds this gold bug and believes it's like gold. Eventually leads to like them questioning his sanity. They hang this gold bug from the eye of a skull, and whatever it lands on, the spot it lands on, when they dug it up, there's treasure to be found. Edgar Allan Poe goes in depth about the ciphers and the different like code, and it's more of like a pirate treasure hunt. And those were the 4 stories that I read by Edgar Allan Poe.
You read Italian?
Of course. It's a native tongue of Machiavelli.
There are other different references that I also caught on that really align with her personality. She mentions that she knows Italian because of Niccolo Machiavelli, and Machiavelli's best known for his line, "It's better to be feared than to be loved." And Wednesday, very Wednesday.
Satre said hell was other people. He was my first crush.
Jean-Paul said this in the play No Exit. I'm not sure if I'm going to be reading the play, but I vaguely know Jean-Paul simply because he was mentioned in my philosophy classes. I read this the other day, and these are tales from Shakespeare. You can see there's a common theme. There are lots of skulls. This was mentioned by Wednesday when she enters Ophelia Hall, a nod to Hamlet's Ophelia.
Signed you to your mother's old door. Ophelia Hall.
Ophelia is the one who kills herself after being driven mad by her family.
Hamlet is a tragedy first and foremost, which I could see why Wednesday would love. Ophelia is the lover of Hamlet, who died a tragic death because she went crazy because Hamlet killed her father. So Ophelia, it's exactly the painting of John Everett Millais, where this young maiden, she's covered with flowers because she was picking flowers to make flower crowns, I believe, and there's a lot of death, which I could see has some connotations to Wednesday because a lot of people die. So yeah, a lot of people die in Hamlet. That's at the ending of Hamlet, like 5 other characters die. And in Wednesday, we see that there are last-minute deaths, such as Principal Weems, other characters killed by the Hyde. Okay, the next book that I'm gonna be reading is The ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. Wednesday says that
Agatha Christie. 1 coincidence is just a coincidence. 2 are a clue, and 3 are proof.
I believe that the quote in the book is actually, "It is the same motive 3 times repeated, that cannot be a coincidence." That's the exact quote, and then it gets mistranslated over time. And so I'm gonna be reading that. I'm really excited. I've never read anything by Agatha Christie, and I'll get back to you after I've read it. Hello, this is me from the future. I wasn't able to read The ABC Murders in my Wednesday outfit, but I will be talking about it right now. I just finished listening to the audiobook on YouTube. It was like a 7-hour audiobook. I did that while like wrapping gifts and stuff. So The ABC Murders was written in 1936 by Agatha Christie. It's kind of like a Sherlock Holmes moment where there's this detective named Poirot, not quite sure how to pronounce it, and Hastings. And we can see that in Wednesday, she kind of follows this like little detective storyline where she becomes like a little Nancy Drew. ABC Murders follows this murderer who kills people in accordance to the alphabet. So far, 3 people have been murdered, and they go by the initials of A, B, B, and C. Also, these people who go by these initials are also from the cities with the same letter. So, for example, Alice Asher from Andover, Betty Bernard from Bexhill, and Sir Carmichael Clark from Churston. Churston? I don't know. The detective needs to find a way to prevent around like 23 other murders from happening. So the letters are sent via a typewriter and it's signed ABC. And we see this in Wednesday. Typewriter, it's a stretch, I know, because like typewriters are used by the most pretentious of people. But the similarities it has with Wednesday is that there is a red herring or a falsely accused murderer. And we see this with Xavier, where he's falsely accused, wherein all the evidence is put into his like art shed, and this is also the same thing for one of the guys. The initials ABC, Alexander Bonaparte Cust, he is framed in a sense that all of the clues that are supposedly leading to the ABC murder are placed in his apartment. But in the end, it's revealed that it's actually not him. So there is like a framed murder element to it, and there's also the element of killing people as pawns for a bigger scheme. Kind of the same thing with Wednesday. The people who were killed in the first part are all part of a bigger scheme to revive Crackstone in the end. It's Giving Mastermind by Taylor Swift. Might be a stretch comparing it to Wednesday, but we see little elements of detective murder mystery and like redirection of who is actually the serial killer.
Mary Shelley wrote it on a dare when she was only 19.
I know. She's both my literary hero and nemesis.
Okay, last 2 books. So Frankenstein was written by Mary Shelley. Why do I keep saying Marie? When she was on holiday with her husband in Geneva, Switzerland. And so they had like this competition to see who could write the best horror story, and she thought about like writing about this mad scientist who creates life and is disgusted by what he creates. Frankenstein's monster doesn't have a name, but Frankenstein's name is Victor. Frankenstein's story is not really what I expected. I thought it would be like straight to like creation of the monster, but this is divided into 3 volumes, and the first volume is all about his time as in academia, learning about science, which I really loved. I loved that first volume. And then the second volume was like a really short portion of him making the monster and it coming to life, and then rejecting this monster because it was ugly. Literally, like that's the whole premise of the story. He was like,
ew, he is so ugly.
I don't want it anymore. Volume 3 is the monster like telling him like, oh my gosh, I have daddy issues now. Because you left me and like no one loves me. So now you have to make me a bride. And he's like, I don't want to do that. You guys are gonna make like demon babies around in the world. The monster's like, oh, I hate you. I'm gonna be with you on your wedding night. And Victor gets married to, you guessed it, his cousin. This book, it's so funny because he's always like, cousin, my love, my more than sister. You're making everyone uncomfortable, Victor. In the books, no mention of electricity bringing a person to life is mentioned. That was only mentioned during the 1931 Frankenstein movie. What I also noticed is the mentions of chimeras. Chimera is a Greek she-monster made of different body parts, like an inspiration of creating Frankenstein, which is also seen when they try to revive Crackstone from his grave. And then the lightning, kind of a nod to the 1931 Frankenstein movie. They basically Frankensteined Joseph Crackstone. Crackstone, are you serious? You could have chosen any other name and you chose Crackstone. Did they have to get a new crack for him too? And the last book that we are going to be talking about today is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I think this is the one literary reference that you need to understand when watching Wednesday. I honestly love this book, but first chapters were so long. It took like how many chapters before people started dying. It follows this guy named Mr. Utterson, and he is a lawyer, and he is currently handling the case of Dr. Jekyll, who is like an esteemed doctor. In Dr. Jekyll's will, it says to give all of his money and all of his possessions to Mr. Hyde. And this lawyer guy is like, dude, why are you giving all your money to this random guy? Like, it's kind of weird. And then some random girl dies. And people are like, oh, the murderer is Mr. Hyde. You better hide, Mr. Hyde. The last chapter is where it gets interesting. Dr. Jekyll is getting sick, increasingly sick. He does not leave his office, and the servants call upon the lawyer, Mr. Utterson, and say like, dude, that's not my master who's in that room. Did you hear him talk? That's not his voice. That's Mr. Hyde's voice. I don't know why he's talking when Dr. Jekyll is supposedly supposed to be sick. At the end, Mr. Utterson and the servants, they go in and they see Mr. Hyde has killed himself. And they're like, oh my gosh, he's dead. Where is Dr. Jekyll? Spoiler alert, he's Dr. Jekyll. The last chapter is like a letter explaining how this whole thing happened. Dr. Jekyll wanted to separate good from evil inside man. The constant mention of duality also really needs to be highlighted because it really shows that there's a dual nature inside man, which I really liked reading about. As a Gemini, I really liked reading about. And so he managed to do that, but with the help of drugs, with chemical-induced drugs. And we also see that in Wednesday, where Thornhill chemically induces Tyler. You guys haven't watched it yet. Spoiler alert, the Hyde is Tyler. Thornhill chemically induces the Hyde to get activated. And she does this several times until he finally willingly does it himself to satisfy his master. I actually did a little research. It seems that the drug potion used by Dr. Jekyll is representative of opium, which was taken from opium dens in London in the late Victorian era. Dr. Jekyll, in this sense, was the purest that a guy could be in like the Victorian era. He represented good, and Mr. Hyde represented just bad. And it became so uncontrollable that eventually he was killed by his own hand. So I don't know if we're gonna see that in like season 2 of Wednesday, where Tyler has like an internal battle with his Hyde. Yeah, like the similarities kind of really end there. Mr. Hyde wasn't like a Plants vs. Zombie monster, and Dr. Jekyll was not a barista. So maybe in Tyler we see that Tyler the barista is entirely good, but then the Hyde is entirely bad. I don't know which one fell in love with Wednesday or if he did, but I say Tyler Redemption era. Oh, don't hate me. Don't hate me. Let's go to the conclusion. Ooh! Hi, okay, since finishing all of the different books, I'm gonna give my final thoughts, I guess. I would say that Wednesday's style is really pretentious, but not in a bad way. I would expect nothing less. I would expect nothing less from her. And of course, since in the series she wants to be an author, of course she has to know the classics. I feel like the different works that Wednesday would have read are Jane Eyre, which is on my to-be-read list. I actually have it over there on my bookshelf, and it's about a mad woman. It's also a nod to Taylor Swift's song, Mad Woman. I think she would be reading Wuthering Heights, which I have tried to read, but I have no brain cells for that freaking book. I think she would read Bram Stoker's Dracula, but that's not gonna be me, because my sister told me it's like literally the most boring book that she has ever read. So maybe I will not be reading that. The final verdict, yes, Wednesday is very pretentious. So am I. And if you guys want to see me do more videos like this, please feel free to comment different shows or different literary references that you want me to check out. If you guys like this video, give it a like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz if you want to. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!